right now on the west side of Houston, we're under mandatory evacuation in neighborhoods where houses are underwater. And CenterPoint is using the smart meters. They're going around. They're turning off the power in those houses because, as the mayor said yesterday, our first responders will deal with snakes and gators and everything else, but they're not going to deal with being electrocuted. And that's what's going on over here on the west side. So that's why we were reaching out this morning to Will at Right Touch Electric to join us on the show this morning, one of our home show pros. Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Charlie. Tom.
So we got, needless to say, plugs are underwater in a lot of houses. And I'm assuming that what we're talking about tearing out drywall, we're talking about pulling out insulation. Tell us, what happens to the wiring in the house after a flood?
Well, I've been very concerned about how we're going to get this taken care of safely. So I did, after the hurricane, I called Southwire, which is a large wiring manufacturer. So we're doing a couple things we're recommending to our customers. One is, and this is according to Southwire, once wire is flooded, they're telling us it's not good anymore. Now, I know they're dealing with some legal issues and things like that, and we're trying to help people out as much as possible. So number one is that is a recommendation we are giving people just to make it as safe as possible, is to rewire the portions that have been flooded. Now, we're also giving a second option because, people are just devastated right now. Most people I've met haven't had any flood insurance, and it's really sad. So we are, the bottom option we're giving people is to go through, and we have to go through all the connections, redo all the connections, and put in new devices, because any connection point that gets corroded or starts to rust, it's going to create a fire hazard at some point.
So explain to me, Will, just as a layman here, I'm trying to understand, a wire's a wire. So it gets in the water, so what? I understand the plugs and stuff, but how is the wiring damaged by getting wet?
So this is people smarter than me, but the engineers from Southwire, the engineers from Southwire, what they told me, and I understand a portion of it, is that the Romex wire has a paper covering inside that is for heat dispersion and to help with that. And so their concern is that the contaminants from the flood, getting into the wiring and that not properly drying out. And then eventually, creating the, deterioration of the wiring from the inside. Now, I met a customer that had a flood, and I believe it was Allison, and they didn't rewire, and their home got flooded again, and the wiring was fine. So we are giving both options. That's one thing we like to do, is just, give as many options to the customers as we possibly can, let them make the right decision for the home and their budget and everything like that.
So I'm listening to that and shaking my head, and I'm thinking, what
Charlie,
next? What
can
next?
you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Will, thanks for coming on. The most important thing, he said devices.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the plugs, the switches, all the mechanical connections. That's really important. Every large manufacturer will try to cover themselves with any kind of a liability issue. If your house is opened up, it's not that hard to change some of the wiring. I think Will probably agree, where you can the wet areas, you can probably do some different things, but the devices are the most important.
Because it's a mechanical connection, and you get the moisture in there. I get that. Yeah, where I was going.
That's where most of the fires or the arcing takes place. The connections in the electrical system, even without a flood, that's the most important thing to make sure is proper and is done correctly.
And my wife was saying, how do you start a fire in the middle of a flood? And I'm thinking that's exactly what it is. There's electric, there's a connection, there's a spark, and you've got a fire. And that's bad. That's a bad problem. My whole reaction listening to that, Will, is I'm shaking my head thinking, my house is underwater. I'm hearing that. I said, what next? What else could possibly be? The wires themselves too? And it just deepens.
Well, there is paper and wire,
right,
and it is there an insulator, but there's also plastic and stuff. So
I'm just speaking.
I think they're pushing it a little deep on that one.
Right. I'm just thinking.
So
the
I'm always the common sense kind of guy. Mm-hmm. That's what this show's about. And I'm not going to pretend I'm a master electrician by any means, but
no, that's why we got Will
the
here
devices, the boxes, the connections, that's where the problems are.
And Will, that's why you have that other option of checking it and testing it before you put new devices in. Is that right?
Yeah, we want to. That's our. We definitely want to give all the options to the customer, and I'm with you, Tom. I mean, I know that I try to call a few different people I want to get real answers, not just what their lawyer tells them to say. That's very important.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we want to be sensible. It's exactly right, and I agree with you.
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, so obviously, if you've had water in the house, it's not just a matter of going and when you can get in there, flipping the main and going back to life. We want you to come in or have a licensed electrician come through and check that out.
Hey, Will, what about those breaker boxes underwater? Do we just forget about it or what?
No, that's very important to change that. But
that's what bothers me.
Well, the ones I've gone to, I mean, usually the breaker boxes have been taller or they're installed higher than the flood for every home I've gone to so far. So.
Yeah. So what if my breaker box did go underwater, Will?
No, you need to change it immediately.
No.
That would be very dangerous.
Hey, I got a question for you, which is off the wall. What about the disconnects on the air conditioning systems outside your house?
If they went on with something like that, if it goes underwater, you'd want to change it.
You need to replace those, don't you?
Yes, because if it didn't go underwater, you're fine. They're NEMA 3 rated. They're rated to be outside, and so they would have been fine. But if they went underwater, if they corrode, that metal corrodes, and AC is probably the largest electrical system in a home. It's going to arc. We change a lot of burnt up AC equipment throughout the summertime in Houston with the humidity and how much we use it. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to make sure that's proper.
Bottom line, then, what I'm getting from this, Will and Tom, is that if you've had water up over your electric, don't turn that main on until you have a licensed electrician come through the house.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. That's correct.
Will,
and
thank
devices,
you. And
devices, anything that's mechanical, anything that has a connection, that's where the real key is, Charlie.
And there's not anything with more connections and mechanical action in it in your electrical system than your breaker box. So if that, like you said, Tom, that's a good catch. Yeah. You got to make sure that's taken care of before you move down the road on that as well. Will, how about you? By the way, I asked Rudy. I got to ask you, how did you do?
We were blessed. We were safe. My family's safe, and so we're just trying to help people out.
Did you have water in your house?
No. Everything's fine.
That's great. Well, you know awesome. What? And I tell you what I say to people who like us, the three of us who were blessed not to have water in our house. Yeah. It's all the more important that we do our part to help those who did, and I think that's what makes Houston, is that we do that.
That is correct.
All right.
Hey, Will. I've been put on the recovery task force from the Austin, the people in Austin. You going to help me? I'd like some feedback from you on this.
Yeah, give me.
No, I'm serious. This just happened like 3 days ago. I was going to retire before this storm. You guys have no idea. And I get this call. You can't retire. We need you. So I am going to ask you, and I'm going to get you off the air, and I'd like to get some feedback on training youngsters to get in the electrical profession, because we're going to need a lot of entry electricians here in the next 12 months to rebuild this city, and we want to use local people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever I can do, Tom.
And I think it goes to what Tom said earlier, too. Using local people is so important. If for no other reason, they've been through this, too, and we have to support each other through this. And I think
after this, they'll have great careers and work for great people like you, Will.
That's it. All right. That's right. Will, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it, and God bless. I'm glad that you guys are safe.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
You guys have a good one.